It's day 452. It's also July 31st, 2020, and we are in Whitlash, Montana. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description. Like so many other places, our discovery of Whitlash, it all started with a simple sign. Rolling along Highway 2 across Montana, just outside a place called Chester, and we spotted it. Whitlash, 42 miles, with an arrow pointing north. And something about that name, that sign, those mountains, and knowing our proximity to the Canadian border, well, we had to go. And the paved road didn't last long before giving way to gravel. Dust rising behind us as we ventured deeper into those sweetgrass hills. It felt like driving into another time. Vast, open lands stretching endlessly. The faded auburn hayfields giving way to lush green ranchland as we climbed in altitude. And with every slow mile at our modest 15-mile-an-hour pace, the anticipation grew. And then we rounded that corner, crested a hill, when that church, that bold white and green roofed church stood greeting us, marking our entrance into Whitlash. A tiny, tucked away community with a sign proudly proclaiming its population of 39. I had expected nothing but empty land and the need to find a quiet boondocking spot for the night. But to my surprise, we stumbled on the Broken Mountains Ranch, an impeccably maintained RV park that seemed almost too perfect for such a remote place. As I backed into a spot, I heard the four-wheeler rolling up the road behind us, kicking up that soft cloud of dust. An elderly gentleman dismounted, introduced himself with a warm smile. "Name's Urban," he said, extending his hand. I responded with my name and a handshake as I asked about the cost for the night. And his response, well, it made me grin. "Well, we try to get $20 a night if we can." I didn't hesitate. "Sign us up for 2 nights, Urban." Urban went on to explain the lay of the land, electric hookups, a spring for water, even a freshly stocked pond. "If you're up for some fishing, help yourself," he added, before heading off to move sprinklers around and tending to his land. I had the sense that he'd been tending to this land for a very long time. As the sun began to set, I wandered through the quiet town, snapping photos, absorbing the stillness of it all. It felt like a place where time had slowed down and history had hung around a bit. A little later, Urban returned from his evening chores, and in no time we'd fallen back into easy conversation. He told me his story, how he and his young bride had left Great Falls in 1965, choosing Whitlash as their forever home. And they had spent their lives ranching here. And upon retirement, rather than leaving, they doubled down. His son had taken over the ranch, and together they had transformed this old sheep farm into the welcoming retreat that we get to experience today. Their campsite even has 3 cabins and a bed and breakfast set up in the main house back up in town. I asked why things were so quiet, and Urban explained, "We got good timing. if quiet's what you're looking for. This is our off-season. We got the place pretty much all to ourselves most of the summer. But fall and winter? Bit of a different story. And hunting season? Well, you better book ahead, he chuckled. I was fascinated with how, in my mind, it would have been exactly the opposite. It's so beautiful up here. Why would winter, the cold, and the snow covering these grassy mountains be the busy time? But I also suspected that that was just the non-hunter in me, and even more so my strong desire to avoid snow and cold. And Whitlash, small as it is, carries some pretty deep roots in the history of the Great Plains. The Sweetgrass Hills, these very lands, were once witness to fierce battles where the Blackfoot people fought to defend their sacred ground. And for nearly 5 years, they resisted until 1887, when the Sweetgrass Hills Treaty was signed, transferring 18 million acres to the U.S. government. The remaining land was divided into 3 separate reservations, forever changing the lives of those who had lived here for thousands of years. And the town itself? Well, it has a pretty colorful history of its own. The post office, which opened in 1892, it's moved several times over the years, but remains in operation to this day. And during Prohibition, Whitlash became a hotspot for bootlegging activity. With its proximity to the Canadian border and the remoteness of the terrain, it was the perfect place for smugglers to sneak whiskey into Montana under the cover of darkness. And legend has it that bootleggers would race down these very back roads with barrels of Canadian whiskey, dodging federal agents as they supplied speakeasies across the state. And some even say that hidden caches of Prohibition-era contraband still remain buried in these hills, just waiting to be discovered. For a place so quiet now, it's almost impossible to imagine the excitement, the secrecy, and the high-stakes smuggling operations that once defined this land. And the Sweetgrass Hills? Well, they themselves hold stories of their own. First, rising dramatically from the surrounding plains, these hills were formed by volcanic activity nearly 50 million years ago. And over time, erosion shaped them into the prominent buttes that we see today. But long before geologists studied them, providing a scientific explanation for all this scenery, the Blackfoot people revered these hills as sacred, and they have a bit of a different interpretation for how their homeland came to be. According to legend, the creator Napi formed them from leftover rocks after shaping the Rocky Mountains. One tale tells of the hero Catoyas, who defeated a monstrous creature atop one of these buttes and solidifying the hill's place in the region's mythology. And there was even a gold rush here once. In the late 1800s, prospectors flocked to a mining settlement near the Middle Butte known as Gold Butte. At its peak, it was home to over 500 people, complete with a school, a hotel, and, of course, a saloon. Now, all that remains is a lonely cemetery, a ghost of the boomtown it once was. And then there's the story behind its name. Originally, the town was supposed to be called Whiplash. But in a twist of fate, or rather, a case of bad handwriting, the name was misread when the post office application was processed, and it became Whitlash with a T. And just like that, history was rewritten. This time in ink. Life here isn't without its challenges. The school that once served children up to 8th grade, well, it closed in 2014 due to low enrollment, so now local children make the nearly 40-mile trek to Chester, Montana, catching a bus each morning, and half the trek is on those dirt roads. Wow, 80 miles a day round trip on a bus. These folks gotta love where they live. And I can see why they endure what likely seems like little inconvenience to them. Just parts of life, really. If you want a life that most of the world has left far behind. As the last light faded over the sweetgrass hills, I sat outside the RV, reflecting on the unexpected charm of this hidden place. Whitlash may not be on most people's maps, but it's a town with a story, and one that, for a brief moment, we were lucky enough to step into. And who knows? Maybe, someday, you'll find yourself passing that same sign, curiosity pulling you north, into the quiet heart of some of Montana's forgotten lands. Laptop closed, final walk of the evening with Dougie done, enjoying the quiet and the darkness. We sure hadn't gotten any closer to Fargo, further away, in fact. But our time here in Whitlash, so worth it. Tomorrow morning, I suppose we'll make that 30-mile dirt road trek back down to pavement. We'll make a left-hand turn at that place called Vallier, Montana, and we'll continue east. And I wonder what we'll learn there. Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously. You can.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.